Spearfishing is a popular sport practiced by thousands of people around the world each year. However, spearfishing poses a significant danger due to the blood left in the water from speared fish, which acts as a magnet for sharks. The struggling, injured fish on the spear can trigger a feeding frenzy among nearby sharks, who often turn their attention onto the fishermen. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. In today's episode, we go over 3 times spear fishermen were eaten alive by sharks. Welcome to Final Affliction. While Waichinukup National Park in Western Australia is known to have a particularly magical coastline, the jewel of the area is Shane's Beach. With beautiful white sands and crystal clear waters, the beach attracts many tourists who come to camp and live away from home for a gorgeous holiday. Whether they come to swim, snorkel, sail, or just sunbathe, there is something for everyone to do and enjoy their time off from work. Aside from the people on the beach, there will also be some other visitors that people may need to be aware of, some friendly and some distinctly less so. People flock to see the different large lizard species and the diversity of exotic bird populations. If you're lucky, you might even catch a glimpse of the world's rarest marsupial, Gilbert's potoroo. It's also not uncommon for swimmers here to come across the great white shark, the most dangerous shark in the world. Jay Muscat learned this firsthand in 2014 when he came face to face with the animal and tragically never escaped. 17-year-old Jay Muscat loved to dive and was an active member of the West Australia Undersea Diving Group with dreams of becoming a commercial fisherman. He would regularly go diving with his friends and family, where he would competitively fish with them. On December 29, 2014, just a few days after spending a happy Christmas with his family, he decided to go diving with his friend Matt Pulella near Shane's Beach to practice his spearfishing technique. They arrived on the shoreline at 11:30 a.m., ready to see who would catch the most fish. The skies were pretty cloudy, creating dark waters in front of them, but they were undeterred. They knew how to handle themselves in the water. What they didn't know was that something was lurking in the waters, just waiting for someone to break the surface. Sharks were not uncommon, and the diving club regularly warned their members of the smaller bronze whaler sharks that would attempt to steal divers' catches. However, there were very few reports of someone actually getting attacked. The teenagers were both blissfully unaware that 2 days ago, a great white shark had been sighted, and then, just an hour before their arrival, the same shark had been seen circling the area again. It was searching for something to eat, and the teenagers were just the right size to convince it to initiate an attack. Upon arrival, the boys entered the water pretty quickly and began diving about 40 meters away from shore. They took some time to assess their surroundings and then began their hunt, hoping to settle the argument of who would be the better spear hunter. They were happily swimming around for about 20 minutes when the unthinkable happened. Matt felt something smack into him with intense force, so much so that he believed that he had somehow been hit by a boat. He was instantly disoriented by the sudden hit and immediately surfaced to figure out what had happened. Looking around to understand what happened, he suddenly spotted Jay flailing in the water with a 5-meter great white shark attached to his leg, the most fearsome predator in the ocean. It dwarfed the teenagers with its massive body and sheer strength. They knew they wouldn't have a chance against such a massive beast. Blood began to surround them as it poured from Jay's leg, and he began to kick the animal in the face with his free leg in an attempt to escape. Aside from fighting off the shark, he also needed to make sure he could keep his head above water, or else his efforts would be for nothing and he would drown. The pain was unlike anything he had felt before, and the more he fought, the more he felt himself weaken. He knew from the amount of blood surrounding him that the shark had hit a major artery or vein and that he was bleeding out quickly. He knew he didn't have much time and continued to kick the predator that was determined to kill him. Tragically, he quickly realized that he wouldn't be making it out of the water that day as he stopped fighting and everything went dark around him. Matt was helpless to do anything but watch as his friend slowly lost consciousness while the shark continued to thrash and tear at his leg. The water was now thick with blood, which caused Matt to become confused as to where the shark even was, but he soon found out. As the shark realized that its first prey was dead, it turned its attention to Matt and began to charge at him. Through the red cloudiness of the water, he could see a set of sharp teeth swimming directly at him, and knew he only had about 10 seconds to save himself. He finally remembered that he was holding a spear gun and aimed it at the shark. He knew that he would only have one shot and had to make sure it was a good one. His life depended on it. Remembering the advice that he had received so many times about how to defend against a shark, he aimed straight for the shark's nostril. He watched as the spear sailed through the water and smashed into the animal's mouth instead. It began thrashing in agony as soon as the spear was embedded into its body, giving Matt a short period to escape. He spotted some rocks about 30 meters away and knew that they were his only hope. He began to swim for his life. He had never swum so fast before, knowing that if he stopped for even a second, then it was unlikely that he would ever escape the waters again. He allowed himself one glance to see how far away the shark was, but luckily it was still thrashing around in pain and blood was pouring from its mouth. He prayed that the animal was dying, not only to save himself, but also as a punishment for killing his friend. He immediately continued his escape, not wanting to waste any more time in the water. After an agonizing swim, Matt made it to the rocks and pulled himself out of the water. He could see where his friend had died and the blood that was staining the water. His friend's body was floating on the surface now, only being moved by the waves and the thrashing of the shark beneath it. Although he was happy to be safe, he just wished the same was true for his friend, whom he was unable to save. He began to search for nearby boats that would be able to take him back to shore, and eventually flagged down a passing fishing boat. He explained what had happened, and they were all rightly appalled by the incident. They agreed to collect Jay's body from the water and began to make their way over to him cautiously in case the shark was still nearby. They kept an eye out for the shark, but couldn't see it, and so quickly retrieved Jay's body from the water. It was then that they saw the extent of the ordeal that Jay had been through. The shark had ripped through his leg, tearing the femoral artery and causing unstoppable bleeding. It is thought that due to this blood loss, Jay then went into hypovolemic shock and his internal organs quickly stopped working. They were devastated at the sight of this poor teenager who had so much of his life ahead of him, killed in such a brutal way. After they returned Jay's body to shore and returned him to his family, a manhunt began to find the shark responsible. The beach was immediately closed out of respect for the deceased, but also for the safety of everyone visiting. The last thing they wanted was another death on their hands. The Department of Fisheries dropped drum lines for a week following the attack in the waters of Chains Beach and the surrounding areas in an attempt to catch the creature. There were patrols sent out in the area to find the animal and told that it would most likely still have the spear embedded in its skin, a clear marker that this would be the animal that killed Jay Muscat. They were hopeful that the body would simply wash up on the shore, and as time went on with no further shark sightings, they began to believe that the shark may have actually died from its injuries caused by Matt's spear gun. The hunt for the shark caused controversy across Australia, with some believing that the shark was simply acting as a natural predator and should not be harmed when humans are the ones invading their homes. Others believe that it was the same as putting down a dangerous dog. Once it attacks a human, it will most likely attack again. Ultimately, the animal was never seen again after extensive searching, so it was decided that it had been fatally wounded during the attack and had either sank to the bottom of the ocean or had become a meal for another animal. We will never know what happened to the shark responsible, but we will always remember what it did to Jay Muscat before he met his final affliction.
On June 4, 2005, Henri and his best friend Piet van Niekerk decided to go on a skin diving and spearfishing trip. That day, Piet van remembers distinctly what Henri said to him before their excursion. Henri said that day he wouldn't mind being attacked by a shark because Miller's Point is notorious for shark attacks. Henri might have predicted his tragic fate. 7 months ago, a 77-year-old woman was taken by a great white shark off Jagger Walk at Fish Hoek. She was devoured and all that remained was her red swimming cap. Since 2002, there have been 7 shark attacks in Western Cape. The waters of Miller's Point connect seamlessly with False Bay's large open waters, a hotspot for great white sharks. In fact, there are so many great white sharks here that False Bay is one of the few places on the planet where divers can reliably encounter the creatures up close, with the protection of cages, of course. According to experts, great white shark attacks are rare. However, because these predators are enormous, fast, and powerful, they are often fatal when the attacks do occur. Studies showed that attacks on humans are often the result of mistaken identity. By looking at humans and animals from a great white shark's point of view underwater, researchers concluded that these creatures, although highly evolved, have poor color perception. However, they are keen on motion and brightness contrast, frequently mistaking humans on the surface as seals. On that fateful day, Henri wore a red wetsuit, contrasting strongly with the surrounding waters. June 4th, 2005 was a day like any other. Most attacks are. The gentle ocean breeze blowing from the south was always inviting for surfers, divers, and swimmers alike. It was especially enticing on a warm and sunny Saturday like this one. Henri Murray was a 22-year-old student from Durbanville, a quaint semi-rural town in the Western Cape province of South Africa. Placed on the northeast outskirts of the metropolis, the town is surrounded by wine and wheat farms. However, Henri was not interested in them. He decided to pursue medicine, attending his 5th year at the University of Stellenbosch, a medical school in Cape Town. Henri had always been an outdoor enthusiast. He had a strong affinity for nature and wanted to experience everything firsthand. He was also a sportsman who never had problems with taking on challenges. After his spearfishing excursion, Henri actually had plans to travel to KwaZulu-Natal. However, that plan was about to be derailed in the most unfortunate circumstances. Henri, accompanied by his best friend and fellow medical student Piet, headed to Black Marlin Restaurant to grab some lunch. The restaurant provided a scenic view of the ocean, so the two hung around there for an hour or so. After finishing their lunch, the two rested and eventually decided to enter the waters at around 2 p.m. in front of the restaurant. With the seas at a low spring tide, Henri and Piet decided to swim towards the deeper parts, approximately 150 meters away from the shore. The ocean was relatively calm, with its half-meter swells every now and again. Additionally, due to the sunny weather, the water had good visibility. It was a good day to enter shark-infested waters. After an hour or so, Henri decided to hunt and spear galleon. Henri took a deep breath and dove toward the bottom of the ocean, spotting a galleon. Henri aimed his fishing spear and fired at the unwitting fish. However, he had no time to celebrate his catch. From the corner of his eye, something was moving in the distance. It was a large silhouette slowly moving toward him. Henri paused and looked at the creature. Then, his heart sank. He realized they needed to get out of the water. Quickly heading back to the surface, Henri shouted to Piet, "A great white is here, we have to get out." There was no problem spotting the shark. After all, the water visibility was excellent. However, as Henri would soon discover, spotting the danger wasn't enough to save his life. Piet heard Henri's warning and promptly moved towards the shore. As the two hurriedly swam together to escape the danger, a great white shark suddenly came out of the water next to them, utterly surprising the two frantic men. The water burst into chaos as the creature propelled itself in the air trying to intercept them. The marauding predator was drawn entirely to Henri and Piet's movements. It was hunting them. After making a grand entrance, however, the shark decided to disappear under the water again. And that's when it all began. Sharks can swim approximately 50 miles per hour. At their athletic peak, humans can swim around 6 miles per hour. Henri knew the shark was circling him. Suddenly, the creature reappeared, showing its fin on the surface. It snapped its menacing jaws at Henri. Henri was never one to back down from a fight. With the spear gun in hand, he was able to fend off the attack. The shark swam away, but it provided little relief to Henri as the creature immediately circled back and turned to him again. Whatever Henri's attempt was, it did not deter the creature. Again, Henri fought using his spear to keep the predator at a reasonable distance. The shark's jaws barely missed him and Henri was unscathed. Usually, sharks don't try to eat humans. However, this particular shark was adamant about taking a bite out of Henri. Instead of snapping at Henri for the third time, the shark swam underneath him and dragged him to the depths. Mind you, this all happened within a minute, so Pete had no time to react. Finally realizing his friend was in deep trouble, Pete dove towards the commotion. However, what he saw would scar him for life. It was Henri's arms dangling from the shark's mouth. The creature had clamped onto Henri's entire body. Seeing the sight of his best friend being attacked, Pete felt an insane rush of anger and fear. He quickly pointed his spear gun at the hostile creature and fired, but it had no effect. The shark had tasted Henri's blood and was in a frenzy. Within seconds of getting shot, the creature swam away with Henri still in its mouth. Panicked and traumatized, Pete swam to the shore and called for help. Immediately after Pete's desperate calls for help, some local fishermen came to his assistance. They used their boats to search for Henri and called emergency services. Within 20 minutes, Simonstown Police and Fire Services, Metro Rescue, National Sea Rescue Institute, and other emergency agencies arrived in the area. They conducted a search but never found Henri or his body. Divers were only able to recover Henri's spear gun, and the rubber swim fin settled a meter below the water's surface. However, the following day, fishermen in Simonstown saw the shark that attacked Henri. They figured it was the creature because it had a spear still embedded in its body. On that same day, a piece of Henri's wetsuit with his car keys were found 7 kilometers from where the attack took place. There was no way that Henri could have survived the attack. At this point, the rescuers assumed he was already gone. They promptly informed Henri's family and Pete. The search for his body continued only until 3:30 p.m. on that Sunday afternoon. Eventually, they had to accept the truth and call the search off. In the following weeks, Pete spoke to the media and remembered Henri's prediction of being attacked by a shark. Pete says, "I think he knew his time was near. I believe God took him away." When the attack happened, Pete remembered feeling helpless, even though he could hear Henri's screams from afar. It just happened too quickly, he simply could not react. Although shark attacks are rare, swimming in the world's most dense location of great white sharks increases your odds of being attacked by multiples. In the case of Henri, it seems he knew this deep down, and unfortunately met his terrifying final affliction.
In February 2014, 28-year-old Sam Kellett, a high school teacher, was spearfishing with friends on York Peninsula's Goldsmith Beach, South Australia. Situated west of Adelaide, York Peninsula is a mixture of rolling hills and large open plains. It consists of prime agricultural land and excellent fishing beaches. The group of friends drove along a gravel track towards the ocean. The rocky sand flats were covered by the tide as they entered the water at Goldsmith Beach on February 8th. Sam was an English teacher at Glenunga International High School. He taught with an incredible sense of humor and a passion and enthusiasm that he passed on to his students. Always active and seeking adventure, Sam was often involved with the school's sports and after-school clubs. Not only did he love diving, but also rock climbing and, more recently, snowboarding. He lived life to the fullest, enjoying every moment, which is what makes this story all the more devastating. Spearfishing provided that same sense of adventure that Sam craved. Free diving beneath the waves, catching your own food, living off the sea was a form of escapism for so many. Away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, outdoors in nature. What could be more enjoyable? The young men headed out into the water. They were free diving, holding their spear guns out in front of them as they descended into the murky depths. They were fishing in about 5 or 6 meters of water, and the visibility was fairly poor. Each of them was attached to a float that bobbed about on the surface of the ocean. Bright orange, it warned boats of underwater divers and helped the group keep track of each other. The group of friends was in the area for the York Peninsula Classic Spearfishing Competition that was due to be held there the next day. These competitions are popular throughout Australia's coasts, providing a sense of fun in a friendly and sustainable way. They thought they would get some practice in before the big day. They had been fishing for about 3 hours, and Sam and his friends had made some successful catches. They spread out in the area, each enjoying his time beneath the waves, silently tracking fish before pulling their trigger. But they weren't the only ones hunting that day. Unknown to the group, there was a large great white shark on the prowl in the area. It moved through the water seeking out prey, an opportunistic hunter, always on the lookout for a meal. Perhaps attracted by the smell of dead and dying fish as the men spearfished, or perhaps drawn by the sounds of the group as they chatted above the surface of the water between dives. The great white shark moved closer. It swam near the ocean floor, hidden by the murky water above. Its movements were slow but powerful, its sharp teeth visible in its characteristically wide grin. Then it spotted something near the surface, the silhouetted outline of one of the divers. It was Sam. The shark moved in for the kill. Torpedoing upwards, it made a beeline straight for the young teacher. Sam's friend Aaron Whitaker saw something out of the corner of his eye. He spotted the shark. His eyes widened as he realized how big the shark was. Likely measuring 5 meters long, he could see the enormous shadow as it emerged from the deep. There was nothing he could do. In the split seconds that followed, Aaron could merely watch as he saw the great white shark launch its attack from beneath. He looked across at where it was headed. The shark was powering upwards through the water column 6 or 7 meters from where Aaron swam. He knew one of his friends was there. He could see the float line entering the water and the orange float bobbing about on the surface. Then, in an almighty splash, the shark grabbed hold of something. It thrashed its head from side to side. Aaron surfaced to see the commotion above the water. His friend, Wyatt Raymount, let out a yell as he also saw the terrifying attack unfolding. No one could see Sam. No one could see what the shark had latched onto. The shark's huge jaws were open wide. Its eyes had rolled back in its head, its pointed nose visible above the surface. Another member of the group, Nicholas Carson, who was underwater at the time of the attack, immediately came up to the surface. He had been spearfishing near the bottom. When he looked up, he saw the commotion. He saw a huge shadow thrashing about at the surface, and he swam upwards. As he reached the surface, he saw the shark break the surface of the water. Then he watched in terror and awe as the shark's enormous tail came up and out of the water before disappearing back below. He was about 25 meters from the shark when it attacked. He could see the shark's dark skin and its immense size. Then came the shocking realization that the shark was attacking one of the boys. They couldn't see Sam in the shark's jaws, but the shark was thrashing around in the area where Sam had been seen only moments earlier. It hadn't gone for the fish that had been caught. It hadn't been distracted by the float. It had clamped its jaws down around one of their friends. The water turned red, a bubbling, boiling sea of bright red, and Sam was gone. Aaron and the others were in a state of shock. Aaron frantically swam away, terrified that the shark was going to come for him. Looking back under the water, he couldn't see the shark anymore. They searched for Sam but couldn't find any trace of him. All that remained was the pool of blood, slowly dissipating into the surrounding water. The attack had come out of nowhere. The shark had been completely unprovoked, although it was likely drawn to the area from the spearfishing activity. Injured fish give off distress signals that sharks can pick up on from a huge distance away, and where there is a fish in distress, there is likely to be an easy meal for the shark. Now, as quickly as it had arrived, the shark disappeared, vanishing into the depths, never to be seen again. And as for their friend, one moment Sam had been there, and the next he was gone. They had heard him let out a yell as the thrashing had begun, but that was it. Following the incident, the group of friends described Sam as the best bloke you could ever meet. From the messages of condolences from Sam's friends, family, colleagues, and students, one thing was clear. This was a very popular and likable young man who had everything to live for. Investigators revisited the site of the attack a short while later. They had hoped to find something, anything from Sam. All they found were 2 weights from Sam's weight belt. They had been severed from the belt and lay on the bottom of the ocean, along with his spear gun, still loaded, lying on the ocean floor. On closer inspection, the weights had markings on them, serrated incisions. Shark experts investigated the evidence and concluded that the shark had been a great white. The characteristic bite marks and the descriptions of its size, shape, and color from those unfortunate enough to have witnessed the attack all pointed towards a great white shark. On average, these sharks grow between 3 and 5 meters, or 10 to 16 feet long. Some specimens have even been found to grow slightly larger. They live in most coastal and offshore waters around the world, as long as the sea temperature is within the range of 12 and 24 degrees Celsius, or 54 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. They have long been feared by humans, and along with tiger sharks and bull sharks, are responsible for the most shark attacks around the world. Sam had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Why the shark went for him and none of the others will never be known. It's heartbreaking that a young man lost his life doing what he loved. It's a tragedy that will haunt his friends and family forever. But his parents have said that Sam appreciated the marine environment and had a deep respect for sharks. Despite the terrible circumstances in which Sam died, he still would not have wanted the shark to be hunted and culled. He knew he was in the shark's environment, and he knew the risks. He also knew how much he was loved by his family and friends, who were devastated at the news of his final affliction.